Princess Hana stood in the Grand Council chamber of her father's palace, her hands trembling slightly as she processed the words she had just heard. The crystal walls around her pulsed with soft blue light, responding to her distress. Her father, Emperor Draven, sat on his throne with an expression that mixed regret with iron determination. "You cannot be serious, father," Hana said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A human? You want me to marry a human?" The Emperor nodded slowly. "Not just any human, daughter. Colonel Tajian Park. The alliance with Earth is our only chance against the swarm." Hana felt her legs weaken. She knew that name. Everyone in the galaxy knew that name. They called him the Ghost of Proxima. Stories of his campaigns had reached even the peaceful gardens of Valora. He was the human who had destroyed an entire Skrull fleet using nothing but asteroids and timing. He was the commander who had sacrificed 3 of his own ships to save a colony of people he had never met. He was ruthless, efficient, and absolutely terrifying. "Father, I have studied humans. They are unstable, violent, emotional creatures. Their minds are chaos. I cannot bond with such a being." Hana tried to keep her voice steady, but her father could sense her fear through their telepathic connection. The Emperor stood and walked to the large window overlooking their capital city. Millions of Valorans lived below in perfect harmony, their minds connected in the gentle web of collective consciousness that defined their civilization. "The Skrull swarm advances every day," he said quietly. "They've already consumed 17 systems. Our weapons cannot stop them. Our shields cannot hold them. But the humans, they know how to fight monsters, Hana. They have fought monsters before. They fought themselves." Hana understood the history. Humans had nearly destroyed their own world in ancient wars. They had clawed their way back from the edge of extinction through sheer stubbornness and violence. When they finally reached the stars, other species had been horrified by their capacity for brutality. But they had also been impressed by human effectiveness in war. "There must be another way," Hana pleaded. "A trade agreement, a technology exchange, anything but this. The humans have demanded a permanent bond. They do not trust simple agreements. They want family ties, blood connections. It is how they think." Her father turned to face her, his ancient eyes filled with sadness. "You are my oldest child, Hana. You are a scholar, a diplomat, a bridge between minds. If anyone can make this work, it is you." Hana wanted to scream, to refuse, to run. But she felt the weight of billions of lives pressing down on her shoulders. The swarm would not stop. The swarm did not negotiate. The swarm only consumed. Without the human alliance, her people would die. "When must I leave?" she asked, defeat clear in her voice. "Tomorrow. Your ship is already being prepared." That night, Hana could not sleep. She sat in her private garden, surrounded by the glowing flowers that responded to Valoran emotions. Usually, they shone with peaceful greens and blues. Tonight, they flickered with anxious purples and fearful grays. She reached out with her mind to her younger brother, Minho. His consciousness touched hers immediately. "Sister, I heard the news." "This is madness." "It is survival," Hana replied through their mental link. "It is surrender. The humans will use this marriage to control us. You will be a hostage, nothing more." Hana wanted to argue, but she wondered if Minho was right. She had read everything available about Colonel Tajian Park. The reports painted a picture of a man without mercy, a calculator who measured lives against objectives and made cold decisions without hesitation. At the Battle of Kepler Station, he had used civilian evacuation ships as bait to ambush Skrull cruisers. Thousands had died, but millions were saved. The humans called it a brilliant victory. Other species called it barbaric. The next morning, Hana boarded her personal ship with a small group of attendants and guards. As Valora's blue sun disappeared behind them, She activated the information displays and began reviewing files on her future husband. There were military reports, news articles, and even some personal information that intelligence had gathered. Tae-jin Park was 34 Earth years old, which translated to roughly 42 in Valoran time. He had joined the human military at age 18 and had risen through the ranks with frightening speed. He had no family. His parents had died in a Skrull raid on an outer colony when he was young. He had no wife, no children, no recorded romantic relationships of any kind. He lived for his work. One report caught Hana's attention. It was a psychological evaluation from 5 years ago. The human doctor had written, "Colonel Park demonstrates exceptional tactical intelligence and unwavering commitment to mission success. However, he shows signs of severe emotional isolation and possible trauma response. Recommended for counseling. Request denied by subject." Hana found that detail strangely sad. Even humans, with their chaotic minds, needed emotional connections. This man apparently refused even that small comfort. The journey to Ironhold Station took 5 days. With each passing hour, Hana's anxiety grew. She practiced meditation techniques, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She prepared speeches in her mind, diplomatic phrases that might help her survive the first meeting. She imagined a dozen different scenarios, each more frightening than the last. On the final night before arrival, Hana stood alone in the observation deck, staring at the approaching human station. It was a massive construct of metal and weapons, designed for war rather than beauty. No gentle curves, no artistic elements, just brutal efficiency. It looked exactly like what she expected from humans. Her attendant, an older Valoran named Yoonji, approached quietly. "Princess, you should rest." "I cannot," Hana admitted. "Tomorrow I meet the man I must spend my life with. A man whose mind I cannot read, whose emotions I cannot feel, whose very nature terrifies me." Yoonji placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then perhaps tomorrow you will be surprised. The universe often defies our expectations." Hana wanted to believe that. She wanted to hope for something other than a nightmare. But as Ironhold Station grew larger in the viewport, filling her vision with cold metal and weapon batteries, she could only think one thing over and over. No way. There is no way this can end well. The docking process felt like descending into the belly of a mechanical beast. Hana watched through the viewport as massive airlock doors swallowed her elegant Valoran ship. The contrast was striking. Her vessel was smooth, organic in design, with flowing lines that resembled a living creature. The human station was all angles and armor plating, built to withstand attacks rather than inspire beauty. When the airlock finished its cycle, Hana took a deep breath and prepared to meet her future husband. She wore her formal diplomatic robes, white and silver, with the royal insignia of Valora displayed prominently. Her attendants had arranged her hair in the traditional style, and she carried herself with all the dignity her training had instilled. If she must do this, she would do it as a princess should. The airlock door opened. A group of human soldiers stood at attention, their uniforms crisp and identical. But Hana's eyes were drawn immediately to the man standing in the center. She had expected a monster, scarred and brutal, perhaps wearing battle armor and weapons. Instead, she found herself looking at someone surprisingly ordinary. Tae-jin Park was not particularly tall for a human, maybe average height. He wore a simple gray uniform with minimal decorations, despite his high rank. His face was young, though his eyes seemed much older. He had dark hair cut short in military fashion, and his posture was perfect, but not aggressive. When their eyes met, Hana felt nothing. No telepathic contact. No emotional reading. Just the silence that came from trying to touch a mind that could not be reached. "Princess Hana," Tae-jin said, his voice quiet and formal. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect in both human and Valoran culture. "Welcome to Ironhold Station. I hope your journey was comfortable." Hana returned the bow, though she had to consciously remember to make it shallower, as her rank demanded. "Thank you, Colonel Park. The journey was uneventful." An awkward silence followed. Hana had prepared many speeches, but standing here in front of this quiet human, all her words seemed wrong. Finally, Taejin gestured toward the corridor. "Your quarters have been prepared. I thought you might want to rest before the formal dinner tonight. Your attendants will be housed nearby." "That is considerate," Hana managed. She wanted to say more, to begin the necessary process of understanding this stranger, but Taejin had already turned and begun walking. She followed, her attendants behind her, through corridors that felt cold and lifeless compared to Valoran architecture. The quarters were actually quite nice, Hana had to admit. Someone had made an effort to include Valoran design elements. There were soft lights instead of harsh ones, and the furniture had curved lines rather than sharp angles. Fresh flowers sat on a table, though they were earth flowers, not the responsive blooms of her homeworld. Taejin paused at the door. "If you need anything, the communication panel will connect you to the station staff. Dinner is at 1800 hours. I will send someone to escort you." He bowed again and left before Hana could respond. Eunji moved to Hana's side. "Well, that was brief. He seems—" Hana struggled to find words. "Not what I expected? Frightening?" Eunji asked. "No, that is what troubles me. I expected a monster, and I find a tired man who speaks softly and provides flowers." The formal dinner that evening was a larger affair. A long table had been set up in what humans called a mess hall, though this particular room was far more elegant than the name suggested. Valoran officials sat on one side, human officers on the other, with Hana and Taejin positioned at the head of the table. Hana observed Taejin carefully throughout the meal. He ate sparingly and spoke even less. When addressed directly, he responded with polite, minimal answers. His human subordinates treated him with obvious respect, but there was something else in their behavior. They watched him carefully, as if concerned about something. One human officer, a woman with admiral's insignia, sat close to Taejin. Her name badge read Song Jiwon. She seemed protective of the colonel, occasionally deflecting questions directed at him or smoothing over awkward moments in conversation. The incident happened during the third course. One of Hana's courtiers, an elderly diplomat named Sang-hoon, made a comment about military ethics. Of course, civilized species maintain strict rules of engagement, even in wartime. "We do not use civilians as military assets." The statement was clearly directed at human tactics, specifically at Taejin's tactics. The table went quiet. Hana felt panic rising in her chest. This dinner was supposed to build the alliance, not create conflict. Taejin set down his utensils carefully. When he spoke, his voice remained quiet, but every word cut like a blade. Civilized warfare is an interesting concept. In the past 3 years, Valoran forces have engaged the Skrell in 47 battles using your traditional methods. Your casualty rate is 42%. Human forces have engaged in 63 battles using our methods. Our casualty rate is 19%. I respect your ethics, Ambassador Sang-hoon, but I wonder if the soldiers who die because of them find comfort in civilization. The silence that followed was absolute. Sang-hoon's face flushed with embarrassment and anger, but he had no response. The numbers were public record. Taejin was simply stating facts. Admiral Jiwon cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should focus on future cooperation rather than past differences." The dinner continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Hana noticed that the human officers seemed unsurprised by Taejin's response. This was who he was, apparently. A man who spoke truth regardless of consequences. After the dinner ended, Hannah requested a private conversation with Taejin. He led her to a small observation room with windows overlooking the station's docking area. For a long moment, they stood in silence, watching ships come and go. "You did not have to embarrass my courtier," Hannah said finally. "I stated facts. You humiliated him." Taejin turned to look at her directly. He questioned human methods in front of both our peoples. If I had stayed silent, it would have been seen as weakness or admission of wrongdoing. Neither is true. Hannah felt frustration building. Everything is strategy with you humans. Every word, every gesture is part of some larger plan. Yes, Taejin agreed simply. That is how we survive. Is that all you care about? Survival? Something flickered in Taejin's eyes, an emotion Hannah could not name. I care about my duty. I was ordered to marry you to secure an alliance. I will do that. You were ordered to marry me for the same reason. We are both following orders. So this means nothing to you? Hannah demanded. I am just another mission? Taejin was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. I know you do not want this marriage, princess. I know humans terrify you. I read the reports on Valoran psychology. I understand that to you, we must seem like violent chaos. He paused. I do not want this marriage either. I am a soldier, not a husband. But we can make this bearable for both of us. How? Hannah asked. Honesty, respect, distance when needed. We do our duty to our people, but we do not have to be enemies. He looked back out the window. I will not hurt you, Princess Hannah. I may be many things, but I keep my word. If you want separate quarters, I will arrange them. If you want minimal contact, I will provide that. We can make this arrangement work without causing each other pain. Hannah studied his profile. He meant it, she realized. He was offering her a business arrangement, a diplomatic solution to a personal problem. It should have made her angry, but instead, she felt strained relief. At least he was honest. I appreciate your directness, Colonel. Call me Taejin. We are to be married, after all. Then call me Hannah. He nodded. Hannah. As she returned to her quarters that night, Hannah reflected on the day. She had expected a monster and found a puzzle instead. Taejin was not what she had feared, but he was also not what she could understand. He was something else entirely, and that worried her more than simple fear ever could. The wedding preparations were progressing smoothly when everything changed. Hannah was reviewing ceremony details with her attendants when alarms began blaring throughout the station. The gentle lighting in her quarters switched to harsh red emergency lights, and a mechanical voice announced something in human language that she did not fully understand. Moments later, Admiral Ji-won appeared at her door, moving with urgent purpose. Princess, we have a situation. The Skrull Swarm has launched an attack on New Bizen Colony. It is a human settlement with approximately 4 million civilians. How far? Hannah asked, already knowing she would not like the answer. 6 hours at maximum speed. Colonel Park is mobilizing the fleet now. Hannah made a decision that surprised even herself. I am coming with you. Ji-won looked shocked. Princess, this will be a combat situation. Very dangerous. Valoran support ships are already en route to that sector. We received a distress call as well. As your future ally, I should be there. What Hannah did not say was that she needed to see this. She needed to understand what Taejin actually did when he went to war. 30 minutes later, Hannah found herself on the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable. The command center was nothing like Valoran ships, which were designed for harmony and collective decision-making. This was pure efficiency. Screens everywhere showed tactical data. Officers called out reports in crisp voices, and at the center of it all stood Taejin, utterly calm. He barely glanced at Hannah when she entered. Stay near the rear observation area. Do not interfere with crew operations. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, and Hana spent the journey watching the organized chaos of military preparation. Humans moved with purpose, checking weapon systems, running battle simulations, preparing medical facilities for casualties they knew were coming. When they dropped out of FDL near New Bizen, the situation was worse than reported. The Skrull had arrived in massive force. Dozens of their bioships swarmed around the colony, which was protected only by light defensive platforms and a handful of civilian security vessels. Status: Tajin commanded. An officer responded immediately. Colony shields holding at 60%. Estimate 40 minutes until collapse. Civilian evacuation is 30% complete. Not enough time to get everyone out. Tajin studied the tactical display in silence. Hana watched his face, looking for emotion, for fear, for anything. She saw only concentration. Redirect all evacuation ships to Vector 77 Mark III, Tajin ordered. Have them broadcast maximum power signatures. Admiral Jiwan looked confused. Sir, that vector takes them away from our position. They will be exposed. Correct. The Skrull will see high-value targets with no protection. They will commit forces to pursue. When they do, Battle Groups 2 and 5 will execute pincer formation at these coordinates. He marked positions on the display. Hannah felt her blood go cold. She understood the plan immediately. He was using the evacuation ships, filled with civilians, as bait to draw Skrull forces into a trap. The plan worked exactly as Tajin predicted. Skrull bioships, sensing easy prey, broke formation to pursue the evacuation vessels. The moment they were committed, human warships appeared from concealment and caught them in devastating crossfire. Dozens of Skrull ships died in the first 30 seconds, but Hannah felt every death on those evacuation ships too. 3 vessels were destroyed before the trap closed. Thousands of civilians, families, children simply gone. Acceptable losses, Tajin said quietly. Continue operation. The battle intensified. Hana watched in horror as Tajin made decision after decision, each one brutal in its logic. He sacrificed a squadron of fighters to create an opening for bombers. He ordered a damaged cruiser to ram a Skrull carrier rather than allow the enemy ship to reach the colony. He sent Marines into a suicide boarding action that killed 90% of the troops but destroyed a Skrull. Command vessel. Every choice saved lives in the long term. Every choice cost lives in the immediate moment. And Tajin made them all without hesitation. At one point, a critical decision emerged. A human carrier, the Resolute, was badly damaged and drifting. Crew were still aboard, trying to repair engines. But Skrull boarding organisms were attaching to its hull. In minutes, they would breach and infest the ship. Sir, Resolute is requesting support, an officer reported. Tajin checked the tactical situation. Negative. All available ships are engaged. Send them destruct authorization codes. The bridge went silent. Admiral Jiwan turned pale. Sir, there are over 800 crews still aboard. I am aware. They have 5 minutes to evacuate what personnel they can. Then they destroy the ship. We cannot allow Skrull to capture human military technology. His voice remained steady, but Hana saw his hand grip the edge of the tactical display until his knuckles turned white. Hana could not stay quiet any longer. How can you make these choices? She demanded, her voice breaking. Those are your people dying. Tajin finally looked at her, and for just a moment, the mask cracked. She saw something in his eyes that terrified her more than anything else that day. Pain. Absolute, overwhelming pain, controlled by sheer force of will. You think I do not feel it? He asked quietly, his voice raw. Every name, every face, I remember them all, Princess. But if I hesitate, if I choose mercy now, thousands more die later. This is what humans do. We carry the weight so others do not have to. The Resolute exploded in a brilliant flash. 300 crew managed to evacuate. 500 did not. The battle lasted 4 more hours. When it finally ended, the Skrull were driven off. New Bizan colony survived with 3 million civilians saved. The cost was 8,000 military personnel. 200 of them Valoran crew from the support ships that had arrived mid-battle. Hana spent the aftermath in shock. Sitting in the observation area while the crew worked with grim efficiency to catalog damage and casualties. She watched Taejin move through the bridge, speaking quietly with officers, receiving reports, making decisions about recovery operations. When things finally calmed, Admiral Jiwon approached Hana. The woman looked exhausted, her uniform stained with sweat and blood from helping with medical evacuations. "You should know something about the Colonel," Jiwon said quietly. "He volunteers for missions like this. The assignments no one else wants, the decisions no one else can make. He does it because he believes his damnation can save others from being damned." "I do not understand," Hana whispered. "After the battle is over, he will write personal messages to every family that lost someone today. All 8,000. He will remember every name, every face, every circumstance of their death. He carries them all." Jiwon looked toward Taejin, who stood alone at the tactical display, still working. "He is not Merciless, Princess. He's destroying himself piece by piece to keep others whole." 3 days later, Anna stood outside Taejin's quarters. He had not slept since the battle. Through the door, she could hear the quiet sound of him speaking, recording messages. She accessed the door controls and entered without permission. Taejin sat at a desk surrounded by holographic displays, each showing a different family, a different name. His eyes were red with exhaustion. He looked up when she entered, but did not stop his work. "Private First Class Haejin Kim, age 22, he was saying into a recorder. "She died defending Resolute's engineering section, buying time for others to evacuate. She was brave, and her sacrifice saved lives. I am sorry I could not save hers." He moved to the next name. Hannah walked to him and placed her hand on his shoulder. He flinched at the contact but did not pull away. "You need rest," she said softly. "I need to finish this first. They deserve to know. They will know tomorrow. Rest now." For a long moment, Taejin simply stared at the names scrolling past. Then, slowly, he deactivated the displays. He stood, swaying slightly from exhaustion. 4 million people alive, Hana said quietly. "Because of you. Because of those 8,000. Their sacrifice meant something. It always means something," Taejin replied, his voice hollow. "That does not make it easier." As Hana helped him to his bed and watched him finally collapse into sleep, she realized something profound had shifted. She had come to this station fearing a monster. She had found something far more complicated and far more tragic. She had found a man who had made himself into a monster so that others did not have to be, and who paid the price for that choice every single day. The ghost of Proxima was not merciless. He was drowning in mercy, in the weight of every life he could not save. And he kept fighting anyway. For the first time since learning of the marriage, Hannah wondered if maybe she could help carry that weight. The royal wedding was to take place on Valora, in the grand ceremonial hall that had hosted such events for 1,000 years. Hannah's father had spared no expense, determined to show both species that this alliance was worth celebrating. The hall's crystal walls were decorated with flowers from a dozen worlds, and thousands of guests from across the galaxy had been invited. Hana stood in her preparation chambers, wearing the traditional white and gold robes of a Valoran bride. Her attendants fussed over every detail, but her mind was elsewhere. In the 3 weeks since the battle at New Bizan, something had changed between her and Taejin. They were not friends, exactly, but they had begun to understand each other. He had shared meals with her, spoken about his childhood on a colony world, even shown her some of the human music he enjoyed. In return, she had taught him basic telepathic etiquette, explained Valoran philosophy, and helped him understand the culture he was marrying into. It was not love, but it was no longer fear either. What worried Hannah now was not Taejin himself, but her own people's reaction to him. Her younger brother Minho had been vocal in his opposition to the marriage, claiming humans could not be trusted. A faction of the Valoran Council supported him, whispering that once the Skrull were defeated, humans would turn their weapons on their allies. These whispers grew louder when Taejin arrived on Valora with his security detail. Humans in military uniforms walking through peaceful Valoran streets made people nervous. Some citizens protested, holding signs demanding the marriage be cancelled. News broadcasts debated whether the alliance was salvation or surrender. The day before the wedding, a grand celebration was held in the palace gardens. Both Valoran nobility and human officers attended, along with representatives from dozens of other species. It was meant to be a show of unity, a moment of hope before the ceremony. Hannah moved through the crowd with practiced grace, speaking with guests, accepting congratulations she did not entirely want, and trying to project confidence she did not feel. Taejin stood nearby, uncomfortable in formal civilian clothes, but maintaining perfect courtesy. She noticed Minho watching them from across the garden, surrounded by his supporters. Her brother had barely spoken to her since she returned from Ironhout Station. The hurt in his eyes was clear. He felt she had betrayed their people by accepting this marriage so completely. The attack came during the meal service. Hannah was speaking with a Valoran senator when she heard a commotion near the garden entrance. Security personnel were moving quickly, and she saw Taejin's human guards suddenly take defensive positions around him. Something was wrong. An explosion shattered the peaceful evening. Not large enough to cause massive casualties, but focused, directed toward where Taejin had been standing moments before. His guards had pushed him aside just in time, but one of the human officers was not so lucky. The man went down, bleeding from shrapnel wounds. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed and ran. Valoran security forces swarmed the area. Hannah tried to reach Taejin, but her own guards held her back, protecting her from potential further attacks. When order was finally restored, the truth emerged. The explosive device had been planted by members of Minho's faction, extremists who wanted to end the alliance before it began. They had planned to kill Taejin and blame it on Skrull infiltrators. The conspirators were captured within hours. Valoran security was efficient, and the plotters had not expected to be caught so quickly. Emperor Draven was furious, but the damage to the alliance was potentially catastrophic. Humans would have every right to demand justice, to pull out of the marriage agreement, perhaps even to declare Valora hostile. Hannah rushed to the medical facility where Taejin was being examined. He had minor injuries, cuts from debris, but nothing serious. He sat on an examination table while a human medic treated his wounds, his expression unreadable. "Are you all right?" Hannah asked, knowing it was a foolish question, but needing to say something. "I have had worse," Taejin replied calmly. "How many casualties?" 7 injured, none critical. The human officer who shielded you is in surgery, but expected to survive." Taejin nodded, processing the information. Admiral Jiwon entered the room, her face dark with anger. "We have identified the conspirators, sir. All Valoran citizens connected to Prince Minho's political faction. Earth Command is demanding an immediate response. Some are calling for the alliance to be dissolved." Hannah felt her world collapsing. Everything her father had worked for, everything she had sacrificed, destroyed by her own brother's followers. But Taejin simply shook his head. Tell Earth Command that the investigation will continue. But I consider this a matter of inadequate security, not political conspiracy. These were extremists acting without official support. Ji-won looked shocked. Sir, they tried to kill you. Yes, and if I make it into a political incident, the alliance fails, and millions die when the Skrull come. These men wanted exactly that outcome. I will not give it to them. You know who ordered this, Ji-won said quietly. We all know. What I know and what I can prove are different things. What matters is what serves our mission. The mission is alliance with Valora. That remains unchanged. After Ji-won left, Hana approached Taejin carefully. Why? She asked. Why protect them? Why protect my brother? He tried to kill you. Taejin met her eyes. Because naming him destroys the alliance your people need to survive. Because starting a political war over this means the real enemy wins. Because sometimes the right choice is to take the hit and keep moving forward. That is not justice. No, Taejin agreed. It is strategy. It is sacrifice. It is choosing what matters most. He paused. Your brother is afraid, Hana. He sees humans as a threat because he does not understand us. But fear is not the same as evil. Given time, Hana felt something break open inside her chest. Some wall she had built to protect herself from this strange, incomprehensible human. He had every right to anger, to revenge, to demanding her family pay for this attack. Instead, he was protecting them. Protecting the alliance, protecting her dad. She made a decision then that surprised even herself. The next day, the wedding proceeded as planned despite the attack. Security was increased dramatically, but Emperor Draven refused to let terrorists dictate the future of his people. The ceremonial hall was filled to capacity, with billions more watching across the galaxy through broadcast feeds. When it came time for the vows, Hana did something unexpected. The traditional Valoran ceremony was simple, involving spoken promises and the exchange of symbolic crystals. But Hana added something not in the planned program. She turned to face the assembled crowd. Her voice clear and strong. I stand before you today, not out of fear or duty alone, but out of choice, she began. When I first learned I would marry a human, I was terrified. I had heard the stories of human violence, human chaos, human ruthlessness. I believed I was being sacrificed to monsters. The crowd murmured. This was not standard wedding speech. I was wrong, Hana continued. I have witnessed what humans are truly capable of. Yes, they are capable of violence. But they are also capable of bearing burdens that would break other species. They are capable of making impossible choices so that others do not have to. They are capable of sacrificing themselves, piece by piece, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. She looked at Taejin, who stood very still, his expression unreadable. Yesterday, someone tried to kill my future husband. They did it out of fear, out of distrust, out of belief that humans are our enemy. Colonel Taejin Park could have used this attack to destroy the alliance. He could have demanded justice that would tear our people apart. Instead, he chose to protect us. He chose to take the wound and keep moving forward. That is not the action of a monster. That is true courage. Hana turned back to the crowd. I want you to know that I embrace this marriage. Not because I must, but because I have seen who this man truly is. He is a weapon, yes, but he is a weapon pointed at our enemies, not at us. He is a shield that bears damage so others do not have to. And I am honored to stand beside him. The hall was absolutely silent. Then, slowly, her father began to applaud. Others joined, hesitantly at first, then with growing enthusiasm. Even some of Minho's faction seemed moved by her words. When it came time for the final bonding ritual, Hana did something else unprecedented. Valoran royal marriages traditionally included a telepathic sharing, but this was always done privately, a personal moment between the couple. Instead, Hana announced she would share the bonding publicly, so all could witness. She reached out with her mind, dropping every barrier, every protection, opening her consciousness completely. And then she reached for Tae-jin. Human minds were normally closed to telepathy, but with his permission and her power, she found the connection. What flowed between them was not words, but pure emotion, pure understanding. She felt his pain, the weight of every soldier lost, every impossible choice, every sleepless night. She felt his dedication, his absolute commitment to protecting those who could not protect themselves. She felt his loneliness, the isolation of being the one who must make terrible decisions, and she shared her own feelings in return. Her fear, her hope, her growing respect, her determination to help carry his burden. The connection lasted only moments, but when it ended, both of them had tears on their faces. 2 years had passed since the wedding, and the war had changed both Hana and Tae-jin in ways neither had expected. They commanded together now, a partnership that combined Valoran telepathic coordination with human tactical flexibility. The results had been remarkable. Combined fleet operations had pushed the Skrull back system by system, liberating occupied worlds and protecting vulnerable colonies. But everyone knew the war could not truly end until the source was destroyed. Intelligence had finally located it, the Skrull hive world, deep in uncharted space. The planet was a living nightmare, completely consumed by Skrull biology, its surface crawling with billions of the creatures. More importantly, it was the central coordination point for the entire swarm. Destroy it, and the Skrull forces across the galaxy would lose cohesion, becoming manageable rather than an extinction-level threat. The problem was simple to state and impossible to solve. The hive world was protected by thousands of bioships, defensive organisms that could strip a fleet to atoms, and a planetary shield stronger than anything the Alliance had ever seen. Every simulation said the same thing. A conventional assault would fail with near-total casualties. Hana stood in the war room aboard the flagship Unity, studying the tactical displays with growing dread. Around her, human and Valoran officers debated strategies, each more desperate than the last. And at the center of it all, silent and thoughtful, was Tae-jin. She had learned to read him over these 2 years. The way he stood very still when thinking through a problem. The slight tension in his jaw when he was preparing to make a difficult decision. She saw both now, and her heart sank. "There is a way," Tae-jin said quietly. The room fell silent. A single stealth ship, modified with Valoran shielding technology and human weapons. It penetrates the hive defenses, delivers a planet-killer weapon to the core. The hive world is destroyed. Admiral Jiwon leaned forward. Success probability? 73% for mission completion. 0% for crew survival. It is a one-way trip. The room erupted in discussion, but Hana heard only silence in her own mind. She knew what was coming next. She had known from the moment Tae-jin mentioned a single ship. "I will lead the mission," Tae-jin continued. "I need a crew of 12. Volunteers only." "No," Hana said, her voice cutting through the debate like a blade. "Absolutely not." Tae-jin looked at her calmly. "It is the only way. Then we find another way. We run more simulations. We develop new weapons. We have run 2,000 simulations. Every alternative costs more lives with lower success probability. This is the answer." Hana felt fury rising in her chest, hot and overwhelming. "So you just decide to die? You make that choice for yourself, for me, for everyone who depends on you. I make the choice that gives our people the best chance of survival." "I will not allow it," Hana declared. She turned to the other officers. "I am calling a strategic council meeting. We will find another option. What followed were 3 days of the most intense planning sessions Hana had ever experienced. She worked with Valoran tactical specialists, human engineers, and scientists from a dozen species. Sleep became a luxury she could not afford. Food was consumed at her workstation. She drove herself and everyone around her toward a single goal: find a way to destroy the hive world, without requiring Taejin to die. On the third day, exhausted and desperate, she found something. A distributed attack using Valoran telepathic coordination could allow multiple ships to strike simultaneously from different vectors. It was riskier, with a lower success probability of 61%, but it did not require a suicide mission. She presented the plan to Taejin in their private quarters. He listened carefully, studying the data, running his own calculations. It could work, he admitted, but the casualty projections are higher. Estimated losses are 4,000 personnel across the strike fleet, but they have a chance to survive. Your plan guarantees death for you and your crew. My plan has a higher success rate. The mission is what matters. Hannah felt something break inside her. 2 years of careful control, of maintaining diplomatic composure, of being the perfect princess and commander, shattered in an instant. You do not get to do this, she shouted. You do not get to choose martyrdom when people need you alive. When I need you alive. Taejin looked genuinely surprised. Hannah, no. Listen to me. You have spent your entire life sacrificing yourself piece by piece. You carry every death, every hard choice, every impossible decision like it is your personal burden alone. You act like your life has less value than others, like you are worth less because you make hard choices. Tears were streaming down her face now, and she did not care. You taught me that sacrifice has meaning. You showed me what true courage looks like. But you never learned the other lesson, the one I am trying to teach you now. Some lives are worth preserving not despite what they can do, but because of who they are. You matter, Taejin. Not as a weapon, not as a commander, but as a person. You matter to me. The silence that followed was absolute. Taejin stood frozen, his careful control finally cracking. She saw confusion in his eyes, then something that might have been pain, or hope, or both. I do not know how to be anything other than what I am, he said quietly. Then let me help you learn. The same way you helped me learn to be brave. Hana moved to him, taking his hands in hers. We use my plan. You lead from the command ship, coordinating the strike. It is still dangerous, still a massive risk, but we face it together. No more suicide missions. No more throwing your life away because you think it has less value than others. For a long moment, Taejin simply looked at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. The strike on the hive world was launched 1 week later. Hannah had never been more terrified in her life. The combined fleet, 57 ships strong, approached the target in perfect coordination. Valoran navigators linked minds across the fleet, creating a psychic network that allowed simultaneous maneuvering. Human weapons officers prepared the devastating firepower that would be needed to crack the hive's defenses. Taejin commanded from Unity's bridge, with Hana beside him coordinating the Valoran elements. The battle that followed was chaos of the highest order. Skrull bioships swarmed from every direction, throwing themselves at the Allied fleet with suicidal fury. Ships died, explosions bloomed in the void, and casualties mounted by the second. But the plan worked. The distributed attack kept the Skrull defenses divided, unable to concentrate on any single threat. Strike groups punched through weakened sections, delivering devastating blows to the hive world shields. The critical moment came when the planetary shield finally collapsed. The path to the core was open, but only for minutes before the Skrull could adapt. Someone had to make the final run, to deliver the planet-killer weapons directly to the target. Admiral Jiwan volunteered before anyone else could speak. I have the fastest ship and the best crew for this. We can make it. Taejin started to object, but Jiwan cut him off with a smile. You taught me that sacrifice means something, sir. Let me prove I learned the lesson. 12 ships made the final run. Jiwan's fighter squadron diving through hell itself to reach the hive core. Hannah watched through tears as they penetrated deeper, their signals growing weaker as Skrull defenses tore at them. 8 ships died in the approach. 3 more were destroyed in the core attack. But Jiwan's fighter, damaged and burning, delivered its payload directly to the central hive structure. The planet-killer weapons detonated simultaneously, and the hive world simply ceased to exist. The explosion was visible across 3 systems, a brief new star that marked the end of the Skrull swarm's coordination. The cost was devastating. 4,200 personnel died in the battle, but both civilizations survived. The Skrull, without their hive mind, devolved into manageable local threats rather than a galaxy-ending force. Taejin insisted on writing every letter personally, just as he always had. 5 years after the war ended, Hana stood in a garden on Valora, watching her daughter play among the flowers. Sora was 3 years old, a beautiful hybrid of both species, with her mother's telepathic gifts and her father's sharp mind. The genetic engineering had been complex, but worth every challenge. Taejin sat on a bench nearby, no longer in military uniform but simple civilian clothes. He had retired from active service after the final battle. As had Ha. They worked now as diplomats and teachers, helping the next generation of both species learn to work together. The nightmares still came sometimes. Hannah would wake to find Taejin sitting in the dark, reliving old battles. On those nights, she would sit beside him, sharing his burden through their telepathic bond, carrying some of the weight so he did not have to carry it alone. Mama, Papa, look. Sora called out, holding up a flower that had changed color in response to her emotions. The garden bloomed around her, responding to her joy. Beautiful little star, Taejin called back, using his nickname for her. A figure approached through the garden. Prince Minho, older now and marked by his own service in the war. He had fought in the final battle, seen what the alliance truly meant. The experience had changed him. Brother, Hana greeted him warmly. Sister, Taejin. Minho bowed respectfully. I came to bring news. The council voted to create a joint memorial on the old battlefield site. Both species, all the names, together.